It's amazing how spirit aligns everything. Um, I was called to make the statement, I am sacred. And I hadn't read the Unity inspirational message for today. But we are sacred. But how often are we really taught this? Many of us grew up in traditions where we were taught that we were born with original sin. That sounds far from sacred. We kind of know that we are sacred, but the focus is on what's wrong with us. So, but if we knew, if we had the embodiment of our sacredness, I think our lives and the life on planet Earth, the energy, society, and cultures on planet Earth would be very different. As I think all of you know, I was born in Haiti, and Haiti has been in the news because the president of Haiti, Jovenel Moise, was assassinated on July 12th. And I will be speaking about old toxic thought patterns, releasing cultural beliefs and mindsets. So, growing up as a Haitian American, I believe, in my opinion, that I was programmed into the lie that I was a victim, very far from knowing that I was sacred. And immigrating to this country, I was then tossed into the salad of the pervasive racial beliefs and traditions that this nation embodies, a double whammy. If you are deemed Black in this world, you are automatically handed the suitcase of victim mentality, and inside are an array of wonderfully toxic thoughts, limiting beliefs, shame, fear, low self esteem, etc. The pain body, according to the spiritual author Eckhart Tolle, is that emotional pain is carried around inside a person in something that he calls the pain body, which loves using these emotions to control our thinking. Apparently, the pain body lives in human beings and comes from the ego. Once the pain body has taken you over, you want more pain. You become a victim or a perpetrator. You want to either inflict pain or you want to suffer pain, or both. Well, in my culture, the legacy that was passed on to me collectively, and not necessarily from my individual family, was the pain body or the idea of you are a victim. The pain body is the emotional reaction that is out of proportion to the triggering event. Eckhart Tolle defines it as that you identify with this pain body. You identify with it, and it's a trap for you. But if you are aware of it, it can become liberation because then you can be aware of your triggers. So there's a wonderful doctor. I've spoken about Dr. Mario Martinez. He is a neuropsychologist and anthropological biologist. He is of Peruvian descent. He is a published Hay House author, and he studied quite a bit about centenarians. I think I've given you a few messages talking about centenarians and how they abide beyond time and age. When he's asked them to pinpoint when were you middle aged, many of them could not, and when they were forced, they said that middle aged was 70 or 80. So he has done a lot of work with centenarians. But another focus of his work has been on how culture influences belief. And here is a quote by Dr. Mario Martinez. He says here that telomeres are the caps at the end of chromosomes that determine cell division and are considered markers of longevity. The longer the telomeres, the higher the life expectancy. And he has found through his research that first generation Mexican families living in close quarters for economic reasons, that maintain strong cultural values have longer telomeres than their more affluent white neighbors. Interestingly, second generation Mexicans lost the telomere advantage when, in the process of acculturating, they disconnected from their families and their cultural values. I wanted to offer that quote to just show how much our cultural beliefs, cultural connections influence our mind and our body and our longevity. So, regardless of your cultural heritage, there is a legacy of thought and consciousness that has been handed down to you. And we can choose as we awaken to consciously disassociate ourselves with these programmings, beliefs, and limited ideas, or we can continue the legacy. So I'm speaking about the toxic thoughts that I inherited. Since Haiti has been in the news, I wanted to talk about the cultural beliefs, thoughts, and feelings I inherited from a very strong pain body of victim from my particular culture and family, and how new thought and unity saved my life. You know that the president of Haiti was assassinated on July 12th of 2021. In my July 4th sermon, I mentioned the energetic portal and the astrological influences that occur in early July when I talked about the 4th of July, the metaphysical meaning of the 4th of July, and throughout the month of July. So, la bourgeoisie Haitienne, the middle class, the Haitian middle class, under the 30-year reign of dictatorial terror of Jean-Claude Duvalier, millions of Haitians left Haiti. My family's background is middle-class Haitians. My mother's side of the family were judges and doctors, nurses, and business owners. My grandfather owned several bakeries and several barber shops. My grandmother had a uncle who was a judge in the courts in Haiti. My mother and father grew up with domestic servants. And my grandmother insisted, she was a bit of a snob, that all of her children would only speak French in the house. My father's side of the family is from the north of Haiti, and my father's father was the mayor of his town, and my grandmother's family were business owners. And so in Haiti, my brother went a few years ago with my dad, and there was a Bernard Beach and a Bernard Mountain. This permitted my parents to leave the country as international students during Duvalier's 30-year reign. They had to leave the country because Duvalier, the dictator, was rounding up the youth and killing them because they had formed a resistance movement against his dictatorship. So many of the more affluent Haitians were sending their children abroad. And so my parents met and married in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and I was born in the mid-70s. And I was born in Haiti because my mother was the youngest daughter of 5 children, and my grandmother insisted that she be present for my birth. So I would have been born in Montreal, but I was born in Haiti in the 70s. And my parents then went on to work as for the UN in the newly independent Belgian Congo, which is now the Congo. We lived in Kinshasa, and like many middle-class international francophones, my first language was French, yes, Parisian French. My second language is Haitian Creole, and when I immigrated to this country as a 5-year-old, I automatically absorbed English. It just came very naturally as a child. And I never understood the image of Haitians as a poor, broken people because I grew up with my favorite uncle who was an MD and who had gone to medical school in Warsaw, Poland, one of the only places that were accepting Haitians during the dictatorship for medical school. So I was surrounded by well-traveled people multilingual who had not arrived in America or Canada on rafts. And I'm not denying that reality, but it simply was not my experience. And yet there was a shadow side to my middle class Haitian, well educated background, a victim mentality that exists today because Haiti has never been permitted to get its footing between the oligarchy rich businessmen and the 27 billionaire families that run Haiti. They've never paid taxes for over a century, not a bad deal. The NGOs, the drug cartels, and the CIA. Haiti has never been a free, independent nation. And what does this all do? What does this all have to do with me? Well, this created a hopelessness that has been passed down into my psyche, passed down generally, general, oh my goodness, I can't say it, generationally. This has been passed down in the DNA. And this hopelessness and victim mentality led me to suffer horribly from depression. Everywhere I looked, if you were Black in the world or in America, you were a victim. This was the shadow energy that was embodied in this wonderful legacy I had of educated middle class Haitians who were world travelers. There was this other side. And this was the other side that came here, that came up for me as a child in America. And I know that many of you know the rest of my story. My parents' divorce, the abandonment, all of this was the quagmire that I was existing in. I felt that nothing was possible for me. As a Haitian girl, I knew that my family included lawyers and doctors, nurses, professors, and teachers, and business people, that my parents and my family owned their homes and lands in Haiti. And yet, here, this shadow side of victim mentality was where I vibrated for the most part in my teens to early 20s. And so there's a word in Haitian Creole that describes the peasants, but you use it for, you describe lower class people or poorer people. And I'm sorry to use these distinctions, but we live in this world. This is not the truth spiritually. And yet in the world, we categorize people. So I'm speaking to that. There's a word in Creole called ti malheureux. Yon ti malheureux in Creole, the little sad one or the little broken one. This epitomizes how Haitians describe themselves as little victims, as little broken ones, as little starving ones. Lack consciousness, a victim mentality. I found myself teetering between confidence in myself and my legacy and deep depression. In my 20s, I was in Paris visiting friends. I'd been very depressed. And when we're depressed, we think it's the location. We don't realize that it's the consciousness. It's where we are abiding in our consciousness. So I thought the answer was leaving America. America was extremely racist growing up in New England. I didn't fit. African Americans were like, you speak French, you're weird. White Americans were like, you're not really Black. So I found that I could find my comfort, or I thought I could find my home in Paris. So I had friends in Paris, so I was visiting Paris, but I was deeply depressed. I met a very, very successful artist who credited her success by reading Catherine Ponder's books. So it's amazing how spirit will follow you. New Thought was following me. By that time, I was in my early 20s. I had discovered New Thought, but I was certainly not embodying it at all. So I read the book called Open Your Mind to Prosperity, and I hoped to give these principles a try, but I simply could not fully believe in a prosperity consciousness, that I was worthy and deserving of good, that I was worthy and deserving of health and wholeness, peace and happiness, that I was a divine child of the Most High, not a victim, but sacred, powerful, wonderful, creative, and brilliant. So I had a hard time believing that this was possible. But the most important thing is that I knew nothing about the law of mind. I did not know that God was the engineer and the law of mind is the engine, and that anything we place into it, good, bad, or neutral, becomes a reality, becomes our reality, that we create our experiences according to our thinking. Everything in the manifest realm has its beginning in thought. I was never, this was not my programming. I was a victim. What do you mean I can create my reality? I am Black. I am Haitian. I am a woman. My parents don't have lands here in America. What do you mean I can be successful? So I didn't believe it. And so at 22, I decided to write Catherine Ponder a letter. I wrote, I looked at the back of the book. I found the address for the Unity International headquarters that was led by Reverend Catherine Ponder, the prosperity guru. And I wrote her a 6 to 7 page letter, back and front. Thank goodness I went to Catholic school and my penmanship was cursive. So hopefully it was legible. But I wrote and wrote and wrote. What did I write? Everything that was wrong. Everything that was wrong with my life. All of my fear, doubt, worry, depression, despair, oppression, victimization, racism, sorrow, my parents' divorce, how everything was impossible. And I received a little booklet. I received a little booklet that I am going to read today for you. And put on my glasses. Before I do that, I would like to read a few definitions for you from the New Thought Dictionary, the New Thought Dictionary. And the first definition is belief in evil creates evil. Wherever we place our mental attention, there we tend to create conditions which correspond to that mental attention. Wherever we place our mental attention, there we tend to create conditions which correspond to such mental attention. And I'd like to read the definition of evil. Evil, a term used to imply the opposite of good. Evil is not a thing in itself, but it is an absence of what is felt to be good or pleasing, as darkness is an absence of light, or death is the absence of life. The term is usually linked with the idea of negation or destruction, though these forms in themselves are not really bad. What appears to be destruction at times is only a vehicle for change. The term is entirely relative. What might seem evil to one man might be seen as good to another. So I would like to read to you what I received from Catherine Ponder. I received a little pamphlet. I'm so sorry. I thought I had it right next to me. I do. I'd like to show it to you. I received this pamphlet. It's probably hard to, it's very small. It's weathered. I've had this in my possession since I was 22, and it says, How to Clear Out Troubles. And what was shocking about receiving this pamphlet was that I had written a book describing everything that was wrong in my life and how it was impossible that I would be able to overcome all of these things, that I was a victim of circumstances. These were the facts. Here's my story, Catherine Ponder. What you're saying in your book about prosperity and blessings and wholeness and success cannot be real, because here is my story. 6 pages back and front. I could have written an encyclopedia, but I stopped at 6. And this is what I received in a small little envelope. And when I received this, I felt as though Mount Everest had fallen on top of my head. It was the biggest bomb. I was so stunned by what it said. I was speechless. I had a moment of shame, but I knew that this cataclysm was the beginning of a new life, if I were so to choose. How to Clear Out Troubles by Catherine Ponder. If you will stop nourishing the thought of evil in your life, it will starve for lack of attention and fade away. To every suggestion of evil, boldly assert, there is no evil. To all talk of evil, evil about you, scandals, descriptions of disease, accounts of death and disasters, dangers, financial and family problems, say, this is not true. There is no evil. Only good shall come from this. Many problems have been healed by that thought alone. Since good is omnipresent, it is even in the midst of evil appearances. Nothing is evil that brings forth good, and something good can come from every experience. If only one person will have the courage to dare to look for that good. Realizing this, Emerson wrote, every evil to which we do not succumb is a benefactor. Do not feel obliged to join in conversations that dwell upon the dark side of life. Silence is better than assent to evil appearances. Silence is not only a virtue, but one of the greatest denials of all. One of the finest ways you can invoke the power of denial is just keeping quiet about your problems. Stop feeding them the substance of your thoughts, words, and emotions. Also, watch that you do not criticize in secret, that you cease from even silently finding fault with another. Put away sarcasm from your speech. Stop complaining. Do not prophesy evil for yourself or another. The ancient Greeks avoided a grumbler or one who foretold misfortune, believing he brought them bad luck. Refrain from accusing others of evil in any form. Cease from petty statements about yourself or others. For instance, do not call your children bad. Stop referring to the faults of your family, business associates, neighbors, friends. Have a good word for yourself and others, or keep quiet. Silence is your denial of apparent evil. There is a healing power available to anyone. There is no healing power to anyone who describes hurts and pains. There is no healing power found in describing evil. Evil can exist only as long as you give it your consent. Only man's belief in evil makes him subject to it. My beloveds, this pamphlet was what I received, How to Clear Out Troubles. I was stunned. I told no one that I had done this. I couldn't believe that this 2-page pamphlet was the answer to all of my groaning, the Greeks who avoided a grumbler, all of my grumbling. I couldn't believe that this was the answer to the legacy that had been passed down to me as a Haitian American. The victim mentality, the despair, we are the poor, broken ones of the world. Haiti will never be stable. There's all this talk about what's wrong as opposed to what's right. And once again, when Haiti showed up in the press and I learned that the president had been assassinated, and my mother called me crying, saying that there'll never be peace in her homeland and what is wrong with Haitians, I remembered this wonderful pamphlet that shocked me into waking up. When I received this, I had a spiritual awakening that I had a choice. that no matter what my legacy had been, no matter what I had inherited from my family system and from my cultural system and the beliefs in the world, I had a choice. I could choose to continue to speak about how bad it is, how I came from this country. My parents had to leave. They had opportunity. They had everything in Haiti, but they were forced to leave because of a dictator. And then I came to the American stew where you're black and racism and black and white, and to New England at that time. Catherine Ponder, as one of my first teachers, was telling me that I had a choice, and that as I continued to put energy into my words, my thoughts, and my feelings, I would attract and continue to create a reality of lack and victimization. Reverend Carlos has often said, you may have been victimized in life, but you are not a victim. We are not victims. And so, my beloveds, I would like to share with you ways that we can dissolve and begin to heal the toxic thoughts and patterns that we have inherited from the world, from our society, and even the addictive patterns that we have in our own consciousness, and how we can begin to heal them. First of all, remember that you are one with a power and presence that is greater than any power in the universe, the Most High God, that you can, through prayer and meditation and contemplation, ask Spirit to transmute your thinking. I was able to heal my deep depression when I began to ask the mind of God to take control of my mind, to stop the patterning of fear thoughts that I was having, doubt or worry or depression. And I would say, Spirit, take over my mind, transmute these thoughts, think. I am one with the mind of God, and God is thinking through my mind. And suddenly I would be distracted by something funny. Someone would say something unusual. And suddenly the thought pattern would stop. So you want to do what I call loading doses of affirmations, or affirmation chains, where you say an affirmation 100 times a day. The same way we go to the gym and we lift weights and we do repetitions, you can do 10 sets of 10 affirmations, so that if you're going through a difficult time in your life, you can repeat affirmations. Some people call it affirmation bombing. I prefer affirmation loading, the same way you do loading doses of a medication or a supplement. So there's an affirmation that I say frequently if I feel fear rising up in my consciousness, and it is, God is in control, nothing but the best can result, for God's law of good is working for the greatest and the highest good of all. I say it 10 times, and then I say it another 10 times, making it 100 in a day. That will heal consciousness immediately, my beloveds. Affirming our good without ceasing, praying without ceasing. Number 2, meditation. We all know that stress, cortisol, can make the brain shrink. It's been studied. Stress and fear thoughts can make the frontal cortex begin to shrink. What makes the telomeres grow? Meditation. They have found that meditators, if you meditate 5 to 20 minutes a day, your telomeres, which are at the end of the DNA, begin to grow, meaning that you are given new life, you are given longevity. Nothing else makes them grow, my beloveds. Let's meditate so we can have a renewing of our minds. One thing that really helped me to overcome the toxic, limited beliefs that I had inherited from my family system and culture was creativity. I was a singer, I've been a creative type, an artist in my life. Music has been a medicine for my soul. Listening to music, creating music, it uplifts the spirit. So music and dance. I have danced salsa for many years. Some of you know, or maybe some of you don't, but I love dancing. There are many, many outlets. You can dance for 10 minutes a day in your home. That releases the cortisol and it heals the body, bringing enchantment and beauty into life. And an attitude of gratitude, my beloveds. An attitude of gratitude will heal all things. It will heal all things. Being grateful. So I began to be grateful for the fact that my parents were able to leave the country with the foundation that they had, and that it wasn't so difficult for me transitioning as far as legal documentation. I didn't go through those struggles because my parents were legally allowed into the country at the time that the Haitians were coming. I have so much to be grateful for, and we all have so much to be grateful for. So I'd like to end my talk by reading an oracle card that I received that I believe was meant for all of us. I'd been meditating about the sermon, and this is what I received. So I would like to read it to you. It is called Initiation by Air. And when I speak this you and this I, it is for all of us. You have a strong and powerful mind. The mind can be a great asset. It can bring comfort, peace, and strength as you take your spiritual journey. It can also be a dark and destructive force, undermining your power, making you doubt your own heart, and keeping you trapped in fear. The mind, developed without a loving spiritual practice, can be a frightening weapon rather than a liberating sword. How will you choose to use your mind power? Your mind can become more spacious and luminous if you practice emptying it on a regular basis. The radiant mind can be a mighty warrior against fear and despair, encouraging you with thoughts of optimism. When not given a chance to empty, however, the mind can become overwhelmed with unprocessed information. Much of it will be fear-based programming perpetuated by mass media, which is invested in controlling others and manipulating them by fear. This initiation, which liberates and opens the mind, empowers advanced souls to free themselves from manipulation and control. The hallmark of a dysfunctional society is that the mind is expected to dominate the inclinations of the heart rather than serve it. The mind can be trained to be a great manager, creator, and defender of what has genuine value to the heart. But the power to feel what has meaning for us, what moves us to rise above our fears and risk growth, comes from the heart, not the mind. When the mind is given the task to feel, the heart is told not to feel. Paralysis, confusion, and discomfort are experienced. As you enter into this initiation, you will feel the need to step back from what you have been taught and learn to question what you have once held to be true. As you disengage from habitual mental patterns, you will begin to observe your thoughts rather than be swept up in them. Soon you will begin to experience yourself as peaceful, a steady light of love that you are in truth. Will the mind go through motions? Yes. However, there is no need to be afraid of this. One step at a time, your spirit shall guide your mind towards peace. You will change the way you relate to your own mind, becoming more empowered. As you soften the stringent action of the mind, you will see that you can use your mental gifts wisely, rather than allowing them to cause you pain. Those who have strong mental energies can accomplish much in terms of communication, invention, and creativity, but they often also suffer from destructive self-talk and mental obsessions. They may even be addicted to thinking, which can wear them out and create cravings for sugar that lead to depression and illness. Instead, it's much better to regularly take time out from the mind and be in the moment, feeling energized, playful, and at peace. Your mind is a powerful creature. Tame it with persistence, compassion, kindness, and strength. Give yourself rest and an opportunity to switch off and empty your mind as you regularly as you can. There's no need for judgment or despair. This is an advanced initiation and one that is brought to you only when you are ready. Consider it a sign of your spiritual progress. The world will benefit from you as you learn to handle your mental energies more constructively.
Wow.
Invocation. And let me finish with this prayer for all of us. I call upon the unconditionally loving ones to help us empty and refresh our minds, renewed in eternal love. May we express our freedom in making wise decisions that create joy and love in us and in the world. We ask for divine mercy, compassion, protection, and instruction to assist us in bringing our minds into loving consciousness. May the divine light of spirit shine unobstructed through our minds, bringing peace to the world. May the unconditionally loving helpers of humanity bring light, healing, and joy to all minds everywhere. Through our free will, we let it be, and so it is. Amen. Thank you, my beloveds. And so it is. Namaste.